Hi, I'm Sharon Hyman. This is number 0665, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0665. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Kathryn Miles, the author of Trail, One Woman's Quest to Solve the Shenandoah Murders. Why was Kathryn so invested in this horrific crime?
This has been a very personal story for me for about 25 years now. I, in a lot of ways, was a contemporary of the victims, both in terms of age and also in terms of life experience and circumstance. And so when I first learned about the crime as a young woman, it really altered my relationship with the outdoors. And then as it happened, I was teaching at the Small Environmental Studies College here in Maine, where one of the victims, Lolly Winans, had been a student when she was murdered.
Mark Gilmartin, the founder of Hole in One International, talks about insurance for things like half-court charity dunks or for getting a hole-in-one that offers a prize at a golf course.
The rates are predicated on three factors. Obviously, if there's more golfers, there's more risk, therefore we need to charge more. The next factor is the yardage of the hole. If the hole is short, it's easier than if it's long. So therefore, the longer the hole, the less we charge, and the shorter the hole, the more we have to charge. And then the third factor is the value of the prize. So if you're going to give away a $10,000 prize, is obviously going to be less expensive than a $50,000 prize.
Summer Moore, creator and writer and also star of the series Pandemic Pillow Talk. This was a show that was completely shot during the pandemic, during lockdown. How did this project come to be?
We actually filmed it during lockdown, so we ended up having to cast people based on their households they were already clumped together. And I wrote the project. Originally, I did a short film called As in Kevin, which is about online dating. We were trying to come up with projects that we could do during this time when all independent film had been shut down. And someone from our team said, well, why don't we do something about dating? And I said, ooh, I could just do a spinoff from As in Kevin and take that character, Mackenzie, and move her into online dating during the pandemic.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news and, of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0665, was filmmaker Sharon Hyman. Her film is called Apartners, Living Happily Ever After, which has attracted international attention, landing her on the cover of the Wall Street Journal and within its pages, not once, not twice, but 3 times. You'll find a link to her website and also a link to that said Wall Street Journal story by going to this week's show, which you just heard her say the number 4. See how it all comes around full circle? Thank you very much, Sharon, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. There are many people who lament about the ills of politics and the fact that there doesn't seem to be enough credible people willing to run for office. So, as a result, those who do run seem to be odd in some of the strangest of ways. Or, the other side of the coin could be that there is so much citizen apathy that the population doesn't seem to care who runs or who wins. You can decide which side of the coin you believe in this story. An Indiana man accused of killing his wife in March and dumping her body in a creek won his township board primary elections. Andrew Wilhoit from Lebanon, a city about 30 miles northwest of Indianapolis, has been charged with murder in the death of his wife, Nikki. 40-year-old Wilhoit recently secured a spot as one of 3 Republican candidates in the race for a seat on the Clinton Township Board. He's been held at the Boone County Jail since March after police said he told investigators he threw a concrete flower pot at his wife and dropped her body over the side of a bridge. Nikki Wilhoit was reported missing on March 25th after her friend noticed she didn't show up for work. On March 26th, police found her body partially submerged in about 3 feet of water. State election officials said it's legal for people facing felony charges to run for local office. A person is only ineligible if they are convicted. Wow. Didn't anybody who was running against him point out during campaigning that the guy they're running against voluntarily led police to where his wife's body was? I mean, I know there are people who think all politicians should be in jail, but I'm pretty sure this is the first time someone was campaigning while in jail awaiting trial for murder. Eee. Elsewhere, police were called to a home in Trenton, South Carolina on May the 7th, where 2 bodies were found in the backyard. The first was 60-year-old Joseph Anthony McKinnon, who apparently died of a cardiac event, according to the coroner. The second body was 65-year-old Patricia Ruth Dent, who was McKinnon's live-in girlfriend, and who clearly did not die from natural causes. An autopsy revealed that Dent had been strangled. Police believe a struggle took place inside the home, and McKinnon wrapped her in trash bags and placed her in a pit that he had dug in the yard. They concluded that McKinnon had suffered a heart attack during the process. Well, the Lord works in mysterious ways. You know, I'm kind of hoping that somewhere in the afterlife, Joseph's version of hell resembles Star Trek's Harry Mudd android versions of his wife Stella in the episode Too Much Happiness.
Hardcore Fenton Mudd, what have you been up to? Have you been drinking again? You answer
Stella,
me.
shut up.
You miserable
I order you.
toad.
Shut up, Stella.
Going out all night and then giving me some silly stories. Court? Hardcore Fenton Mudd, you've been overeating again and drinking for me.
Don't do this to me.
Need constant supervision. I've got my work cut out for me.
Yeah, that would be perfect. And finally, here's a question for you.
How far would you go for an espresso?
In 2019, Nestle's Nespresso Coffee Company announced it was working to convince South American farmers to grow coffee rather than coca, which is processed into cocaine, to fight international drug trafficking. A recent shipment of coffee arrived at Nespresso's factory in Romont, Switzerland, but employees called police.
Experience the quality of Nespresso, and you'll let no one compromise your pleasure.
Instead of coffee, multiple burlap sacks contained more than 1,100 pounds of white powder. Police say it's cocaine worth more than $50.65 million U.S. Said Nestle in a press release, the substance in question did not come into contact with any of our products or production equipment. We want to assure consumers that all our products are safe to consume.
Nespresso. What else?
Well, either way, you're going to perk up. Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? In May 1996, 2 skilled backcountry leaders were found brutally murdered at their remote campsite in Virginia's Shenandoah National Park. Despite an extensive decades-long joint investigation by the FBI, National Park Service investigators, and the Virginia State Police, this case has never been solved. On the 20th anniversary of this infamous crime, award-winning journalist and author Kathryn Miles started digging into this case. The culmination is the true crime novel Trailed, one woman's quest to solve the Shenandoah murders. Kathryn joins us on the line from Portland, Maine. Hi, Kathryn.
Hi, how are you today?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for doing this. There are a lot of true crime books and stories out there, and you are an investigative journalist. What was it about this one that made you choose this story to follow and track down?
This has been a very personal story for me for about 25 years now. I, in a lot of ways, was a contemporary of the victims, both in terms of age and also in terms of life experience and circumstance. And so when I first learned about the crime as a young woman, it really altered my relationship with the outdoors. And then as it happened, I was teaching at the Small Environmental Studies College here in Maine, where one of the victims, Lolly Winans, had been a student when she was murdered.
Wow. So in digging into this, what was the first aha moment that came to you when you started digging into this story?
Yeah, and there were a lot of aha moments along the way. You know, I really kind of went into this thinking that when the Justice Department announced in 2002 that they had made an indictment in the case, that justice had been served and they got the right guy. And I think, you know, on the 20th anniversary of the murder, when I began researching this for a magazine article, I still really assumed that they did. And it wasn't until I started getting access to court documents that I began to realize just how thin the case was against this individual.
What was it that helped to push this investigation further along? Was it literally the passage of time and the increased proficiency when it comes to investigative skills and technology? Or was it just hard, for the lack of a better term, gumshoe work?
I think it was a little bit of both. You know, this was such a high-profile case when it happened in 1996. I don't think the nation had really seen such a brutal double murder in our national parks. And so there was a lot of media and also congressional attention in 96. And then when this indictment came down and John Ashcroft, who was then Attorney General, announced that this would become the first federal hate crime in our nation's history, I think there was a lot of both legal and, again, media and pop culture attention to the case. And because it was a federal case, that meant that there was a lot of documents being exchanged between the prosecution and the defense that, as a journalist, I had access to in a way that I wouldn't have had access to with a lot of other cases.
Okay, so dig a little deeper into what was the actual the crime and the fallout of it, because I just gave a little bit of a synopsis as an intro, but you just mentioned, for instance, it was a hate crime. So dig into that a little deeper as to why it was considered a hate crime and how, if any way, that changed the investigation.
Sure. And, you know, that designation of hate crime doesn't come until about 5 years after the murder. What is true is these two young women, Lolly Winans and Julie Williams, were in a romantic relationship. So in that regard, I think it fit the structure of a hate crime. But what was really interesting to me was the fact that when this indictment was announced, which was barely 5 months after September 11th, John Ashcroft held this nationally televised press conference where he drew a series of comparisons between September 11th and this crime. And he made very clear that he thought that by prosecuting and ultimately executing this individual, Darrell Rice, that the nation would somehow find some kind of healing for September 11th. I thought that was such a peculiar combination of events that in my mind didn't necessarily fit together. And so that was very interesting to me as well. I don't think we'll ever know if the perpetrator actually targeted these women because of their sexuality. Certainly, I think this does fit the category of a hate crime in the sense that there is an entire generation of people, especially women, and women who identify as LGBTQ, who were really rattled by this to the point that they no longer go out into the wilderness.
You mentioned that John Ashcroft, you didn't understand his connection to 9/11 in this particular story, but can you, even though you don't understand it, can you connect the dots as to how he seemed to get there?
I tried. I certainly spoke to investigators, both FBI, National Park Service, and also some of the prosecutors who I quote in the book. And they don't pull a lot of punches in saying that they believe this was political theater and a way for the Bush administration to look like it was willing to be tough on hate crimes in a way that was maybe palatable to the general public. I contacted Mr. Ashcroft personally. He wrote back and told me that he couldn't recall enough details about the case to be able to answer anything definitive on record.
How long did it take you to write this book?
It was about 5 years from start to finish, 4 years of really in-depth research, several of which I undertook with the Innocence Project, and then about a year to write and revise.
I would assume that a book like this, especially one that deals with a crime that can be connected to the LGBTQ community, that this is a book that was highly anticipated by said community. Do you feel that's the case?
I hope so. I mean, certainly I've been very pleased with the reception that it's received so far. It's really my hope that this book will begin to spark a conversation about who gets safe to feel safe in the wilderness, and also why this country has 250,000 cold cases, many of which can be solved. So, I feel like any attention to this case might lead to its closure and might lead to more case closings and also better wilderness access for people who deserve it.
Do you think prosecutors got the right person?
I do not. I make a case in the book for who I think did it, and I would love if your listeners let me know if they think I got it right.
So because you don't think prosecutors got the right person, and you, as you say, make the case for who you think it is, does that in any way, shape, or form concern you, the fact that you're putting this information out there and said person can read it?
Yeah, and I asked that question of investigators less in terms of my personal safety, but more in terms of I certainly didn't want anything that I was doing in the book to potentially jeopardize the Justice Department's ability to actually close this case. I think certainly that's the best possible thing that could happen, and I definitely didn't want to be a hindrance to that in any way. As it happens, the individual who I name in the book committed suicide after police began to pursue him for 3 other murders that occurred very close to Shenandoah. And so unless his ghost is walking the earth, I feel pretty safe.
Okay. So having said that, then, do authorities consider the case closed based on who they thought it was? Or is the case closed because the person that some people think it is, including yourself, is no longer with us?
The case is very much open in terms of the legal system. When the charges were very quietly dismissed against Daryl David Rice in 2004, they were dismissed using a legal concept called without prejudice. And so basically what the prosecution said was, and this was just before jury selection, the prosecution said, we really believe we have the right guy, but because of a procedural snafu, we're not confident that we can get a conviction. However, we reserve the right to bring this case back at any time. So in that regard, you might argue that Daryl Rice is sort of living in this state of double jeopardy right now.
So in that case, is it possible that with the popularity of your book and anything that comes out of it on the back end of the success of your book, that this person could be exonerated?
Yeah, and I can't say for sure who did and who did not do this crime, but what I can say is that Daryl Rice's life has been completely ruined since this indictment, and he's basically a homeless person living underground for fear of his own life right now. And if he is in fact innocent, that's a real miscarriage of justice, and that's an innocent individual who deserves his life back for sure.
When it comes to true crime novels, true crime movies, true crime television shows, it's a situation that is fascinating. It's a burgeoning economy right now, and it can right some wrongs and tell the truth about things that have taken place or correct injustices that have been done. But on the other side of the scale, it's also using actual crime as entertainment. How do you balance those two situations?
I am so glad you asked this question. And, I fully admit that this book is true crime, and I fully admit that I certainly listen to my fair share of true crime podcasts. But I think you're absolutely right that the line has gotten very blurry. And one of the things that I find most unfortunate about some true crime is the way that it almost seems to sort of valorize the perpetrator, and it really turns the victims almost into objects. And going into this book, I had so much respect and admiration for Lolly Winans and Julie Williams that it was very important to me that they remain the main characters of this book, and that I was really paying homage to their legacy and really kind of calling attention to the residual loss and trauma that their murders continue to cause, not just to their friends and family, but also to this larger community.
Have you had any contact since the publication of the book with any of the family of the two women who were murdered?
I have, and the very close community of friends who also kind of, served as a de facto family for them. And, the reactions have been a little mixed. Some people have said, I'm glad this book is out there, but it's so painful. It's bringing up so many terrible memories. I just can't read it. I've had other people who have been really promoting it on their social media channels. So, understandably, grief has a spectrum and a range, and certainly I want to respect everybody's grief and their willingness to engage or disengage with the book.
Well, it's a fascinating story. The book, again, is Trailed, One Woman's Quest to Solve the Shenandoah Murders. Kathryn, I thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
My pleasure, and thank you for calling attention to this very important case.
Kathryn Miles, author of Trailed, One Woman's Quest to Solve the Shenandoah Murders. You can go to my website at thestufffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0665, and you'll find links to Kathryn's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order her book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestuffileprogram. You're experiencing the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. Sit back, relax, let it rattle around between your ears, tickling your cerebellum, and enjoy.
And still to come on the program, we will talk about hole-in-one golf insurance, plus Summer Moore, creator, writer, and star of Pandemic Pillow Talk, will be on the program. We also have an Idiot of the Day coming your way, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. 34-year-old Jeremy David Hansen of Orange County, California, has been arrested after investigators allegedly traced multiple threats of violence to him. They say Hansen targeted the Springfield, Massachusetts staff of the Merriam-Webster Dictionary publisher because he didn't like the definitions of various words, including woman and girl. In one threat, he said it was absolutely sickening that Merriam-Webster now tells blatant lies and promotes anti-science propaganda. There is no such thing as gender identity. He allegedly said that the company should be shot up and bombed, and it would be poetic justice to have someone storm your offices and shoot up the place, leaving none of you commies alive. Once police got involved, investigators found Hansen had also targeted many others, including the ACLU, Amnesty International, Hasbro, IGN Entertainment, the University of North Texas, professors at Loyola Marymount University, and a New York City rabbi. He has been charged with interstate communication of threats to commit violence. Well, now the folks at Merriam-Webster can simply put in a picture of Hansen in their next edition to explain the definition of whack job. At the Palm Haven Mobile Home Park in St. Petersburg, Florida, feathers were flying on May the 8th. 57-year-old Christine Turman became angry that a chicken belonging to her neighbor, Lawrence Stenzel, had been defecating on the patio. So, according to the arrest report, Turman retrieved a bucket of pee from her bathroom and threw it at Stenzel. The bucket struck him in the face, causing him pain, but worse, The police report went on. The victim was wet when we arrived and smelled of urine. Terman fessed up to the dousing and was booked into the county jail on a misdemeanor battery charge. Her boyfriend, 59-year-old Kevin Avery, also was arrested for threatening Stenzel in the presence of an officer. Well, to me, this story is incomplete because I really want to know what happened to the chicken. And Christine, the idea that you would keep your pee in a bucket for revenge seems kind of petty and juvenile. The adult form of revenge would be your choice of chicken recipes.
This is the best Kentucky Fried Chicken I ever had. I got the bucket so you could have some.
Exactly. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, speaking of buckets, 19-year-old Jania Shamiracle Douglas was arrested on May the 12th in the Florida Keys for reckless driving and fleeing from a Monroe County Sheriff's deputy. When the officer finally caught up to her, Douglas told him that getting arrested had been on her bucket list since high school. So, congratulations, Jania. You can tick that one off.
Make a list of all the things we wanted to do in our lives before we kick the bucket.
Yeah, some people really need to get a better list. Anyway, let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? If you've ever watched a golf tournament or charity event, you've probably seen some kind of prize for getting a hole-in-one or a halftime basketball event for sinking a half-court shot. Usually, the event itself has some kind of insurance in case someone actually manages to earn the big prize. Such an insurance company is Hole-in-One International, and the man who started the company is Mark Gilmartin. Mark joins us via Zoom from Nevada. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Peter. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. Now, you started this company quite a few years ago. How did you get into it in the first place? Because from what I understand, doing a little look at history, such insurances go back basically a century, back to about 1933. But how did you get into it?
Funny story. We were still in college, my business partners and myself. At that time, we had a golf club repair company that we were working and after school and whatnot. And we all played on the college golf team, and we were sitting around one day. One of them you might have heard of, Kirk Triplett, who had a very good career on the PGA Tour and is still out playing on the Champions Tour now. So he's a partner in the business. And we were sitting around one day, and he's the one that actually came up with the idea. Have you guys ever seen this hole-in-one insurance industry or business? So from there, I took it and ran and did a little research on, at that point in time, there were only a couple companies in the business. A little different from what you're talking about being around for a century. These are companies that cater to providing the coverage, like you mentioned in your open there, for prizes at golf tournaments and for half-court events at sporting events and things like that. So at that time, there was only a couple companies. This was around 1980. They started about 85. We started in 91. I did some research. I put a business plan together and, off we went. Kirk went off to play the tour and my other business partner and myself started grinding.
Giving a historical perspective to all of this, as I described in the introduction, the way the business has sort of grown is slightly different from the origins. Nowadays, you basically insure for companies that want to have, for instance, a golf tournament and want to insure on the big prize. But the original idea for such an insurance, the onus wasn't on the golf club itself, but it was insurance for players who got a hole-in-one, correct?
Yeah, so, and that's still, that insurance isn't very prevalent here in the United States. I know that it is in Japan. So the typical tradition is if you make a hole-in-one just out playing golf at any venue, then you're supposed to be buying drinks for those, your friends and your playing partners, and maybe even those in the entire club. So that insurance was established, like you said, a century ago to cover that bar bill, if you will. It's evolved now into giving away cars and trips and $1 million cash and all kinds of things for all kinds of promotions. Like you mentioned, we do a lot more than just golf here in the States. But I know in Japan, they do still have the individual golfer insurance, which is mainly to cover the bar bill if you make a hole-in-one.
Can it be for you a lucrative business? And the reason why I ask that is I would assume the odds of getting a hole-in-one or a half-court shot are less than the odds of having a minor fender bender for which we all have car insurance.
I would assume so. So the odds for an amateur golfer to make a hole-in-one are about 12,500 to 1. I don't know the odds of having a minor fender bender driving a car, but I know I've driven probably 12,500 times and not hit anybody or anything. So, yeah, knock on wood. I don't want to get in a wreck this afternoon. But, I'm not sure on the auto odds, but the odds of making the hole-in-one, like I said, are about 12,500 to 1. The odds of making a half-court basketball shot are about 40 to 1. I mean, we know odds on pretty much everything that's skill-based, if you will.
How do you go about setting a rate? And let's stick with golf for a moment, only because I would assume the odds are different based on a particular hole on a golf course.
Yeah, so the rates are predicated on 3 factors. I'll go through this and then we can discuss, how each factor affects. Obviously, if there's more golfers, there's more risk. Therefore, we need to charge more. The next factor is the yardage of the hole. So obviously, if the hole is short, it's easier than if it's long. So therefore, the longer the hole, the less we charge. And the shorter the hole, the more we have to charge. And then the third factor is the value of the prize. So if you're going to give away a $10,000 prize, is obviously going to be less expensive than a $50,000 prize. So those 3 factors go into an algorithm and it spits out the price. And it's just like all insurance, Peter. Most insurance products are developed to where they know the expectancy of how many people are going to make a hole-in-one in this case. And they know that on average, the prize is going to be this. So you know what your cost of goods sold, for lack of a better word, is going to be at the end of the day, the end of the year. So you put your profit margin on top of that, and that's how you develop your pricing. So at the end of the year, you hope that if everything comes out according to the odds, you will have made whatever profit margin you put on top of everything throughout the year, and that's going to be your profit. Now, where it can go wrong, and it has gone wrong in certain years, is all the hole-in-ones that go in throughout the year are all for high prize values, not low prize values. So that's the risk that us and the insurance company, our underwriter, actually takes. Is the ball going to go in the hole and cost us $5,000? Or is that same ball going to go in the hole and that tournament happened to buy a policy for $100,000? So that's the difference that we have to play with. But it's a volume game, and hopefully at the end of the year, it all comes out according to the odds, and we make our expected profit margin.
Now, does your potential client vary from case to case? And I'll give you an example. A golf tournament has a hole-in-one contest where the prize is a Mercedes-Benz. Could your client be the golf course or the Mercedes dealership?
It could be either, right? So we deal with golf courses, auto dealers, just sponsors. Could be an insurance agent that wants to put his name out there as sponsoring the hole-in-one contest. Can be anybody that is looking to get recognition or for a contribution as a sponsor to the event.
And in the years you've been doing this, I would assume you've been very successful with this business. What's the most interesting or maybe odd situation that you have insured?
Well, on the golf course, since we're focusing kind of on that, so we've had hundreds and hundreds, and over 31 years now, we've had thousands of claims, thousands of winners. And we obviously do an investigation when there's a winner. It's a soft investigation, but we talk to the people that witnessed it. And we've heard some crazy stories. We've had a hole-in-one bounce off the bar cart and go in. We've had them run through bunkers and go in. We've had them hit behind the green and then bounce back onto the green and go in. So we've heard it all. It can happen, and it does happen. Like I said, we've had thousands of winners over the years. Off the golf course now, our other company is called Odds On Promotions, and that's basically where we insure all promotions other than golf, if you will. So that's the half-court basketball shots and the field goal kicks at half times of football games. And there we've had some very odd scenarios. So, as you can imagine, 31 years, people call up with some crazy ideas, throwing hot dogs through the window of a car. We've had people shooting pumpkins out of these cannons that they make, trying to hit a target, 100 yards away. We've had what's called cow patty bingo, which you might have heard of, popular in the Midwest. They'll take a football field and they'll chalk it off into 100 different squares. They'll sell those squares to raise money for charities. And then they set a cow out on there, and wherever it drops its cow patty, if that's the predetermined winning square, then they win the insured prize. So, the sky's the limit. We can insure basically any promotion where there's not a guaranteed winner, where there's a chance of winning, but not a guarantee of winning.
How do you go about figuring out what the risk is on something like, for instance, cow patty bingo? Or if somebody comes up with an idea that is so unique, how do you quantify what the risk possibilities of a payout would be?
So there's basically in this business, it really gets real simple once you boil it down. There's three types of risk. There's mathematical risk. So for example, cow patty bingo, if they chalked out 100 squares on a football field, the patty's only going to land in one square. So therefore, that's a 1 in 100 chance. That's what's called a mathematical risk. There's skill-based risk, and skill-based is like we've talked, hole-in-one shots, half-court basketball shots, field goal kicks, right? That's based on the skill of the person, of the contestant taking the shot. So those prices and those odds are determined. We have 31 years of statistics that we obviously use to determine those prices. But in the beginning, we did a lot of out backyard field goal kicking and free throw shooting and shooting half-court shots. And obviously we're golfers, so we kind of know the odds of that. We did a lot of that ourselves. So we have a lot of washed up old jocks that we put together, and we'll try it 100 times and we'll see how many times we can do it. And you pretty much have to take a stab at it at that point when it's brand new and we have no prior experience to it. The third type of odds are what's called odds-based odds, which is what are the chances of the San Francisco 49ers winning the Super Bowl next year? And so we do promotions where auto dealers or appliance stores will say, come and buy your car or come and buy your washing machine from us. And if the 49ers win the Super Bowl next year, we'll rebate you the full price, so the full amount. So you'll get a full rebate. Your product is free. In those cases, there are professional odds makers that are out there. As you know, sports betting is very prevalent. There's always professional odds makers out there that we take the odds from and apply them to our algorithm, and therefore we're able to ensure the promotion based on those.
So this is a very interesting business that you've been in for so many years now. Do you do it only in the United States, or have you branched out to a larger global situation?
No, we have branched out, right? So Hole-in-One International is just that. We do a fair amount of business outside of the United States for golf tournaments and hole-in-one insurance. And then odds-on promotions as well. We do promotions all over the world. We do more business in the States because we're located here. Our marketing reach is much better here. But we do a fair amount of business outside of the United States.
And if people want more information, want to find out more about what you do and how you can be hired, I assume they can go to your website and find out all the information they need.
Absolutely. So holeinoneinternational.com, you can get an instant quote. So within literally 2 minutes, you can get a quote and the paperwork and everything necessary to ensure a hole-in-one contest at any golf tournament. And then oddsonpromotions.com, that is more of an idea bank. So you can go there and look at thousands of promotions that we've developed and insured over the years and see which one may apply to you. You're more than welcome to customize one of your own and give us a call. But oddsonpromotions.com has thousands of ideas that can be used at any situation.
Mark, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. This has been a fascinating discussion. I thank you very much.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Have a great day, Peter.
Mark Gilmartin from Hole-in-One International. You can go to the websites he mentioned, which are holeinoneinternational.com and oddsonpromotions.com, And you can go to my website at thestufffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0665, and you'll find links to both of those sites. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Peter Anthony Holder here. Often I mention my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. I also often mention that I'd like you to become a patron of the Stuff File program via patreon.com. Well, this is my opportunity to combine both of those pleas to you. You've heard me say on many occasions about the myriad of celebrities I've had the chance to talk to that are contained in my book, which is published by Bear Manor Media. You've also heard me mention that some of the celebrities in my book, and many others, can be heard on our page at patreon.com. Well, if you've been on the fence about joining Patreon, let me try to pull you over to our side. By becoming a patron, you help to make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. And if you do become a regular patron, as a Patreon reward, I'll share with you an electronic version of my book for your e-reader. So join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up today at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's way more fun and a lot healthier than licking all the buttons on an elevator.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to the creator of Pandemic Pillow Talk. We also have an Idiot of the Day and one more Stuff File news story to share with you right here, right now. There is an unusual lawsuit that was filed in a northern Indian state by Sanjeev and Sadhana Prasad. They are the parents of 35-year-old Shrey, who they are filing a lawsuit against because of mental cruelty. The elders are demanding compensation equal to about $650,000 if Shrey and his wife do not produce a child within a year. Sanjeev said they spent all of their savings on their son, sending him to the United States for pilot training, and that he returned to India but lost his job and required their support for 2 more years. They arranged a lavish wedding and reception for him, but after 6 years, the couple are, according to Sanjeev, still not planning a baby. At least, if we had a grandchild to spend time with, our pain will become bearable. Yeah, I can already feel the pain of the son. I'm also sure their daughter-in-law finds this just peachy, too. Anyway, let's get to our last guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Multi-hyphenate filmmaker Summer Moore is back on the show with the latest endeavor that she has created, also writes and acts in. This one is a 9-episode show called Pandemic Pillow Talk, and Summer joins us via Zoom from California. Hi, Summer.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Nice to have you back on the program with us.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Now, the last time we spoke, we were talking about your horror film, The Warning.
Yes,
which was based on a true story. Satanic panic and Satanism.
Yeah, woo!
And in that one, you also did all the jobs. You wrote, directed, produced, all that, and you're doing it again. You're a control freak, aren't you?
No, I didn't direct in that one, FYI.
Oh, okay.
So, and I don't direct in this either. I just produced, act, and write. That's all I do.
That's still, that's all you do. That's all you do. Yeah. Just a walk in the park.
I'm not a control freak at all. I'm very much about teamwork. And this project, like any, could not be made without all the people involved. It's not, I can put it on the page, but then the actors have to breathe life into the characters, and then all the production has to get done. And then there's the post, the editorial and the music. And it's not me by any, I'm very much a collaborative person. Like if I had my druthers, I would not probably be doing all of that at once.
It's a 9-episode show. How long is each episode?
They run an average between 5 to 8 minutes, but the finale is 15 minutes. It's a doozy. There's a lot going on there. It's really fun.
And you're one of those people, there have been several, we've had a few of them on this program, there have been several people who have come up with something that is uniquely pandemic related. And for you, it's right in the title, Pandemic Pillow Talk. So tell us what Pandemic Pillow Talk is all about.
Well, so we actually filmed it during lockdown. It was during December 2020 when everybody was like still in pods and you weren't like mingling with other people. So we ended up having to like cast people based on their households they were already clumped together. And I wrote the project. Originally, I did a short film called As in Kevin, which is about online dating. And that went through the festival circuit and got some awards. And then we were trying to come up with projects that we could do during this time when all independent film had like been shut down. And someone from our team said, well, why don't we do something like about dating? And I said, ooh, I could just do a spinoff from As in Kevin and take that character, Mackenzie, and move her into online dating during the pandemic, and wrote it based on us being able to have what the experiences of what people were actually going through during the pandemic, which was real online dating, meaning via Zoom. So coming up with creative ways to have us sit in front of a camera and not be just talking heads and be entertaining with a pretty much locked off shot for almost all the episodes was a challenge. But I think every episode is very different. And I keep hearing from people, oh, I love this is my favorite. And then they watch the next one. Oh, this is my favorite. And it's like, it's really cool to have so many people like into the different characters.
So you've written this, and they always say, write what you know. And this is the second piece of work that you've written that deals with online dating. So what are you telling us, Summer?
I'm still single, man. I've done online dating. As in Kevin had a lot more of my personal experiences in it. This one has the experiences of guys I've dated, like their characteristics I wove into the characters, but I wasn't doing actual online dating at all. I actually did a lot of research on what people were encountering during the pandemic, as well as working in all the Zoom snafus that people were learning how to, oh, you're still on mute. You know, why are you still talking? We can't hear you. Figure out the mute button, things like your arm disappearing into the background and things like that. So those are the real experiences, but online dating is rough. And that's basically the message and the moral of all of these.
There are other people in the show. You have a cast. One of the people you managed to snag was Eric Roberts. We'll get to that in a moment. But tell us who else is in the cast and how you went about casting the various parts for this show.
Yeah, so great question. Thank you for asking that. So because my character is heterosexual, she's dating men, and I didn't want to only have a male cast. I'm very strong behind diversity and promoting women, and I felt like it was very important to try to work women characters in there. And a lot of the times that meant that they had to be in a household, like I mentioned earlier. So it had to be a couple, or we have a mother and a son that are in it. Eric is also in it. He plays my father, and his wife, Eliza Roberts, ends up playing my mother. And originally I had written it so that not to confine them in the same household, because it gets a lot harder. You have to find two really good actors that nail the roles that you want now with this kind of confines of casting. And then because she had submitted and she was just awesome for it, then I could respin some of the stuff so they're actually in the same house versus the way I had originally written it.
Well, just based on the confines of what you had to do because of the pandemic, did you have to, as you just described, change anything else within your script based on who you got cast for a particular role?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I will say first off that all the actors had to be very technologically savvy because there was no crew that were going into anyone's houses. We would drop a box off at their front door and they have to set up lights and do camera and do everything. So I think some of the people, we definitely had to cast people that were good with tech and also had some of the tech that we needed. If we had a guy that was in New York and we weren't going to be able to get him all the gear in time. And so he had to have the gear so that he could film himself. And so there was a lot of things that went into, it's not just you're a good actor. I mean, we couldn't cast outside of the US, and we cast a couple people on the East Coast, but then we had to work on how to get them equipment and things like that. Other than that, the roles were pretty much, I don't think there were any actors that we completely changed it for. I did have one character that was that I'd written it where he was going to be doing it in like a I think it's like an old 20s kind of like announcer voice where they're like, the horses are coming around the bend, and where they talk real fast and blah, blah, you know, like I can't do it. But I envisioned that. And then another actor came in and he just did a whole nother take on it. And it's just awesome the way he did it. So, I mean, there's things you kind of go, hey, this is different, but I don't think overall I didn't change one character from a totally different type to another because of who we cast.
Did all of the actors involved in their various locations have to self-direct, or was there a way via Zoom that they could be directed by someone else or by the director?
Yeah, so we had 5 different directors, and it was really important for us to get women, various diversities, and we really wanted to spread the work out. A lot of people were hurting for work, and as you know, women in the industry, as well as the world, don't seem to get, or there's an injustice. So it was very important for us to get all women and give them shots to be able to direct comedy. And so it was a whole new world to be directed via Zoom. I mean, normally as an actor, you're going in and you're just focusing on your stuff and you just come onto set, do your thing, and then go back in your trailer or whatever. And this was very weird to have the director on Zoom, but then also all the crews on Zoom. So you're hearing all the different chatter of like, hey, oh, so-and-so's mic's not working, or hey, the lights need da-da-da. So it was very hard to get into your character space of, I need to focus. I need to be me, who I'm going to play, instead of I got to go worry about my lights and my sound and whatever kind of thing. So we had Zoom, and then we had another program that we used that allowed it so that the crew could see what our camera was actually filming. So we had basically several cameras. We had a webcam that was watching us so we could be on Zoom. Then we had another camera that was actually filming us. Then we had a camera that was for our audio. And I actually had a side camera. So I had 2 cameras that were filming me. And then that allowed the director to see the shots remotely.
When we spoke about the film The Warning, you at the time mentioned something to the fact that you didn't know what you were getting into before you got into it.
Yeah.
And so yeah. I'll ask a follow-up based on that. What types of intuition did you bring to bear on this film that you learned because of the others you had done beforehand, where you were doing a lot of the work on your own?
Well, since then, I've done quite a few other films, and it's been very important for me when I'm hopping in as an actor that I can have another producer that can take over for the production versus The Warning. I was the only producer. So it was very hard for me that I'm like on set as the only producer as well as the lead actress. So I had a counterpart, Star Session, and she actually worked from Hungary to do this. And she took over full-on production. And at one point, I was still trying to produce while I was acting. And she said, stop, you're just acting now. And it was just like, oh, okay. Like, I'm not used to that. Like, so that was one thing that I have learned over the years of, I need somebody else that can take the reins while I'm being able to act. I mean, I'm used to wearing a lot of different hats and being able to juggle in between them. And this production team was just amazing that they really wanted to give me the space to let me act. Like, Summer, you need some downtime. We're going to shoot this other person. You need to go rest. And it was really nice to have that instead of, oh, now I got to hop into producer hat and be able to work on, whatever. So, I guess that would be a big thing.
Shooting this in uncharted territories, shooting it during the pandemic, looking at it in your rearview mirror, was this shoot easier or harder than you thought it was going to be when you first started it?
Harder, absolutely. I mean, I'd originally written it so that we were just using webcams, and I thought we could just record via Zoom. And as we found out through the technology, and you may have experience with Zoom, there's a lag, and it's not perfect HD. And so we ran into all these obstacles. So we had to keep pivoting to go, what kind of equipment or what kind of technology can we get that's going to make each episode better and better and better. So from that standpoint, but then there's also the standpoint of me being the actor, having to do all of the crew positions. I mean, it was a nightmare. It's literally the worst, the hardest shoot that I have ever been on, and made me really appreciate crew even more, that I can sit in my seat and somebody can light me and I'm not having to hop up, move the light, go back into the seat. They look at me, oop, nope, you need to move it again, go back up, move the light. It's a big science. That's why they're pros.
Well, congratulations on the final outcome. The show is Pandemic Pillow Talk. How can one see it?
The website is pandemicpillowtalk.com, and the episodes are free. We don't even have advertising on them. They're also on YouTube, but if you go through the website, then you can watch them directly through there. And we'd really like for people to like, subscribe, share. We need all the promotion we can get on it because it is a little indie project and we need word of mouth.
And again, that's pandemicpillowtalk.com, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Summer. Congratulations once again, and thanks for being on the program with us yet again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Summer Moore, creator, writer, and star of the 9-episode show called Pandemic Pillow Talk. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the page for this show, which is show number 0665, and you'll find links to the show's website where you can see the series. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
A sheriff's volunteer officer in Georgia was charged with selling prescription pills out of a patrol car while in uniform. Sheriff Grady Judd said he is hotter than a bare butt on a tin roof in August about the incident. 69-year-old David Roberts was arrested on weapons and drug trafficking charges. An investigation into Roberts was activated after detectives learned a volunteer was selling Oxy and the prescription pills had been found inside a patrol car. It was discovered that Roberts was allegedly getting 90 oxycodone pills a month for 2 years and selling them at $10 each. He was caught by an undercover deputy. Said Sheriff Judd, "This makes me so crazy I want to pluck my eyeballs out one at a time." Drugs were allegedly found at Roberts' home, along with a rifle and a pistol. Roberts wasn't supposed to have guns because he was a convicted felon and was not allowed to possess them. "You're talking about an epic system failure," Judd said. "He's a convicted felon from 52 years ago." Judd says Roberts was arrested for a burglary when he was only 19. Roberts had been a volunteer with the department for 12 years. Now, I'm all for rehabilitation and forgiveness, so I'm just going to let the idea that he was a volunteer police officer who was also a convicted felon when he was already an adult, albeit 52 years ago, I'll let that slide. That's a question to be pondered on another day. But why, oh why, would you think it's a good idea to sell Oxy from a patrol car while in uniform? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0665. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestuffile.com. And once again, Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0665. Email me at peter@thestuffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter as PA Holder, and don't forget to check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including kdxradio.com, truetalkradio.com, streaming on Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio, and over the air on World FM in New Zealand, MediaCore in Singapore, WLSLLP-FM in Dade City, Florida, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, and local 107.3 FM in St. John. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Guests of the Stuff File program stay at their own homes. Trust me, I'm the voice for this program. I know there's no budget for accommodations. I'm reading this on a futon.